Back with us on the SportsMax Zone. Britain's largest gym chain by membership, Pure Gym, has come under heavy fire for a new workout they listed as 12 Years a Slave. The workout, designed by a personal trainer named Matt Simpson to celebrate Black History Month, consists of a 100-meter sprint, squats, push-ups, box jumps, deadlifts, among other tasks. Black History Month is celebrated in October in the United Kingdom. In a post on Instagram, Pure Gym said, "Slavery was hard, and so is this." Britain's reigning 200 meters world champion Dina Asher-Smith is among some high-profile figures who've criticized the name of the workout. She says, "I am shocked, hurt, stunned, and confused that someone would think it appropriate to use the enslavement and the brutal torture of generations of black people to characterize a workout." Lance, what's your view?
Well, the first thing that jumps out at me is, I take Dina Asher-Smith's point, is that you choose to have a tagline like that in Black History Month. I'm suggesting that working out at the gym and the way some of the instructors are, you do feel like a slave sometimes in how hard you work. And I'm suggesting if this wasn't connected at all to Black History Month, maybe people would overlook it. But why would in Black History Month you choose that slogan? It's shocking, actually.
Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he didn't know.
He does. In this part of the world, we have February as Black History Month, but Britain knows, and black people in Britain know, that October is Black History Month there, and it was not lost on him, I'm sure.
Okay, so
a huge misjudgment as far as I'm concerned.
When I first read the article, I said, is it that now everything that somebody does, we're going to call it insensitive? I understand the political and social climate, but Lance and George, I looked at it as, okay, Matt is a black person as well. And he said it in his apology. He said that he wants to link history, which is what his ancestors would have been a part of, to his passion, which is working out. And I looked at it and I said, maybe he genuinely felt that based on what his ancestors went through, he wanted to link it to what he's doing right now. And he said it, his passion. So maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I felt like only because of the political and social climate that we're living in right now, it's quick to just jump in and say something like that. George?
Well, he has a point in his defense, but I wouldn't have done it because it is highly cantankerous to do that at any time in this period that we're in, and we're supposed to do it in this month. So I wouldn't have chosen that name if I were Matt Simpson, and I wouldn't have approved it if I was a member of the Pure Gym staff or the people who approve messages that go out on social media. And I probably, very likely, if I had committed the infraction that Matt Simpson has, and it is an infraction, I would have worded my explanation differently. I'd have given an apologia, a better explanation of why I had done so. But to your point that, the overly sensitive nature, and he too is black and he's tracing it to what he went through and his own struggle, I think that's a good point. I think that's a good point to pivot from. And a lot of the times when we argue, we can't accept that there are nuances to points because we just believe in black and white. I'm purely right, you are purely wrong. So on this score, Matt Simpson, tone deaf, because he's not listening to the tone that is prevailing right now. Bad judgment because of the extra sensitive time that we are in.
Yeah.
But in terms of the substance of what he did, I think there are grounds there to be able to empathize with why he went for that name. But I'm just saying, it's caused too much trouble. It will do more harm than good, and because of that, I would never have done it, and I would never have endorsed it were I in a position to offer same. Yeah.
To side with him in any way, shape, or form, if you can, George and Mariah, I take his point, and I accept that he didn't feel he was being insensitive when he was doing it. It's something he felt passionately, and Mariah, you made the point that he wanted to make that link.
Connection.
Yes, so I think there is some genuineness in what he is saying about his thought process in going into it, but it was a huge error in judgment, certainly not in Black History Month.
He was misinformed, I guess, and George said it. Maybe the people that were approving the messages should have told him, it's like, I wanted to put out something and both of you checked it and just allowed me to go ahead. They should have advised him, but I think he just did it from a good place, but wrong time, and of course, no proper advice.
Yep. crack on, shall we? Embattled South African star Caster Semeya and her legal team are set to approach the European Court of Human Rights to seek to overturn testosterone rules implemented by World Athletics. The 29-year-old unsuccessfully challenged the rules at the Court of Arbitration for Sport and will now not have the opportunity to defend her Olympic 800 meters title. It's important to note, CAS had said that its ruling cannot be challenged. Joining us to discuss the story, senior writer at SportsMax.tv, Leighton Levy. Leighton, good afternoon. Happy birthday, they say, and I'm saying the same thing.
Thank you so much, guys. Nice to be here.
Are you a pensioner yet? Are you at that?
Josh Davis,
No, tell us.
Not quite there yet.
if you were living in the UK, they'd give you a bus pass by now, Leighton.
I know, but I've been to Jamaica for the time being, and I'm quite content that I am not yet ready to retire.
There you go. All right. So to the matter at hand, what, if anything, can the European Court, the European Court of Human Rights do for Miss Semenya?
I don't think much. I think that have to establish, George, that there was some kind of bias from the Court of Arbitration for Sport. They tried it a few years ago in a matter involving a football. I'm trying to remember the exact case, what it was. But they tried to establish that there were some preconceived or preordained biases from the CAS council that had overheard the case. I'm not quite sure whether or not that would wash here. In fact, given the nature of this particular situation, I don't know if they'll be able to successfully overturn it on a human rights basis, because then they would have to establish that the panel that heard the case before CAS would have had some intrinsic biases, and they'd have to prove that.
Usually, people try to strike moral blows or to get moral victories in certain situations that they find themselves in, to tell other people, to prove to other people that, look, I believed I was innocent. I moved heaven and earth to prove my innocence. And what I've done, even though I have been ruled to have been guilty by a tribunal or a panel, based on what I've done otherwise to challenge that, it proves to you, it should prove to you that I'm a person of integrity and that I did not do what they said I did. So I say all that to say, isn't this a very expensive and perhaps unnecessary thing for Caster Semeya to do to prove that she should be given the right to run and defend her titles in the way she is? And I say unnecessary because there's so much public sentiment in her corner than there was at the time when she just emerged on the scene and people didn't know quite how to treat with her and treat with people who were like her.
It's an expensive venture, George, but I think it's worth a shot. Because I think there are a lot of societal biases that work against Caster Semeya. Let me give you an example. When Michael Phelps went to the Olympics in 2008 and won all those gold medals, and of course went back in 2012 and did well again, we heard how fantastic an athlete he was. We heard how he was extraordinary, right? We heard that he had double jointed chests that allowed him to kick from his chest as opposed to from his ribs. We heard that his body produces only half the amount of lactic acid than the regular athlete, which means that he doesn't tire as quickly. We heard how his ankles are able to bend an additional 15 degrees and allows him to kick even harder, which gives him an advantage. What's the difference between what Michael Phelps has and what Caster Semeya has? She was born with her body produces excess testosterone. Isn't that the same as Michael Phelps producing half the amount of lactic acid, which allows him not to tire as quickly? So I think there is a basis for at least a challenge to put it out in the public space, that there may be some kind of bias, maybe it's gender biases, maybe it's racial biases, because it seems to me for one individual, they're being praised for their abnormalities, while on her part, she's being vilified for it.
Leighton, how much will this legal battle affect her preparation for the Tokyo Olympics?
I don't think it will affect her training any at all. I think she'll probably train with the anticipation that she will be able to compete at the Olympic Games. If you're an athlete, you train and prepare for any eventuality. And that means that she prepares for the eventuality that somehow, some way, she'll be allowed to compete in Tokyo next year.
Leighton, you mentioned just now that there could be, based on the overall view on, or the global view on this, that especially because there's so much support coming from her home country, South Africa, there is this underlying feeling that there's a racist angle to this story, and the perception is real from a lot of people. I'm suggesting, though, that when Jarmila Kratochvilova back in 1983, a muscular-looking individual, I'm not sure how much of a woman she was, but I think from my recollection, there was a lot of concern and distaste among the track and field fraternity as well, that this Czechoslovak athlete breaking the world record in the 800 meters, 2 weeks after that, breaking the world 400-meter record, and she didn't really look like a woman. So
here's the argument that I think explains that, George. If you remember, Lance, sorry, if you remember, that was the days when a lot of things used to happen behind the Iron Curtain.
Yes.
There was systematic government-sponsored doping that Eastern European athletes, including those from Czechoslovakia, had access to. If you remember, there was a specific case of a discus thrower who, after she retired, then eventually just went and completed the surgery to allow her to become a man fully, because of the doping that went on, the high levels of testosterone and other male hormones that were injected in her body over an extended period of time. So I think the concerns over the world record holder, that I know still the world record holder, was primarily because of the significant suspicions that came out with what was happening in Eastern Europe and Russia, and of course the United States. So I think the complaints and the resistance to accepting that record at the time had significant basis in the fact that there was evidence to suggest that there are a lot of, untoward things happening behind the Iron Curtain. So, that's the basic difference between her and a Caster Semeya, who was born that way, who was raised as a woman, who was allowed to compete as a woman and won Olympic gold medals as a woman, and then all of a sudden they tried to change the rules to cater to those people who were complaining against her dominance. So that's a significant difference there.
Yeah, a lot of her rivals are complaining, though. It's not just, a lot of people in the global space that love track and field, but in the same way that a lot of Kratochvilova's rivals had complained bitterly then, a lot of Semenya's rivals are complaining now, because to them, they are competing in an unfair situation. That's what they are seeing. These are the athletes competing against her.
Yeah, and I get that, because if you're getting beaten daily by somebody who you believe is more a man than a woman, then you're going to feel offended, you're going to feel aggrieved, you're going to feel like you're being denied an opportunity to really compete and win. But when Maria Matola was dominating, because her features were not as masculine as Semenya's, they tolerated that. She was even more dominant than Semenya. If you remember, and that's the thing to this day, Caster Semenya has not run some of the times that Maria Matola ran, but only because of her physical appearance. Why I think there is this.
Well, her PR is faster than Motola's PR, isn't it?
But yeah, well, India, just remember that just recently, I think it was last year, that she actually broke that barrier. But the thing is, I think a lot of what affects Semenya, I believe, is more how she looks as opposed to what she is. There's the perception that she looks more manly, the fact that she's gay and got married to a woman. All these things, I think, fall into a lot of the societal biases that we see every day in other sports, in other pursuits of life, that is now affecting her in sport. And I think, my position on it. I think it's unfair. I think that's the way she was born. And it's not like she went into a lab and got enhanced. So I think she should be allowed to compete. So I think a lot of it has to do with the perception of and how she looks and maybe how she behaves. I mean, everybody who's spoken about her on the circuit says she's a really nice person, but the fact that she looks more manly than she does a woman presents a significant challenge for those who are being beaten by her.
Yep. Also the case against the reigning women's 400 meters world champion Salwa Eid Nasser is ready to begin in court. We hear Nasser, who has been charged for whereabouts violations, runs the risk of missing out on next year's Olympics if found guilty. Based on the rules, 3 violations within a 12-month period can lead to a suspension. Based on the critical points of the case that you have analyzed, Leighton, is Salwa Eid Nasser staring down the barrel?
She is. I think when you consider the fact that the Athletics Integrity Unit mentioned that when she was competing at the World Championships in Doha last October, that they were already investigating a 3rd missed case. She herself put up a message on Instagram where she said it's not a big, pretty much suggesting it's not a big deal, the fact that she missed 3 tests. The rules are clear. If you miss 3 anti-doping tests within the period of a year, you're automatically going to be suspended for a period up to 2 years. So I don't see where, and of course, since that came up last October, in January, she missed another testing as well. So that's 4 missed tests. No. So I don't know if she has a strong enough argument to suggest that there is something else other than those missed tests, why or a valid reason why she missed those tests. What I think also works against her is the fact that over the past few years, we've seen a number of Bahraini athletes who have been transplanted from other African countries who have gone to Bahrain and test positive. Rashid Ramzi back in 2004. You have a number of other athletes, including Jebet, I think who was banned for 4 years. Ruth Jebet, I may remember she's the Olympic or the world steeplechase champion. Eunice Kerwa. The list goes on where all these athletes were transplanted from Africa, whether it's Kenya, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's Morocco, and they come into Bahrain. There is a trend now where these athletes are seen to be doping once they get to Bahrain, are allowed to cheat in some form or the other. And I think these factors will mitigate against finding her innocent of missing those anti-doping tests in 2019. I think she's looking at a 2-year suspension and the possibility of a stripping of that 48-14 that she ran in Doha last year, which was the 3rd fastest time ever.
Yeah, that's where I was going to see if World Athletics would pursue her to take her title and to strike her name from having competed at the event in Qatar. You say that's likely?
It is likely to happen because then those tests would have occurred within the period when she was preparing for the World Championships. That 3rd missed test occurred just before she went into the World Championships. So therefore, you're looking at a situation where she would be guilty of an offense before she even took part in the World Championship. The likelihood is that she's going to be stripped at that time if she's found culpable.
There you go. Leighton, it's your birthday. Go and enjoy your sugarless cake and have a good time of it. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Guinness so far is doing it, George.
Guinness.
Courtesy of the wife, lots of Guinness and carrot cake.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much. Leighton Levy there, senior writer at SportsMax.tv and a track and field expert. Let's take a break.
Double L.